Hi, and welcome to my tutorial for the animated company production logos. This tutorial is mainly for distance learners and remote learners when you guys are off campus so that you can do this at home. Note that this tutorial is done with Adobe Premiere, but any other editor such as Final Cut or DaVinci can do the same thing. It's just a matter of finding the buttons and controls because the interfaces differ. So if you're using a different editor, you're still doing the same thing that we're doing here, and I will show you a little bit of Final Cut and DaVinci as far as keyframing goes as we go through this. So at this point, you should be past the pre-production stage and the production stage. You should have created a treatment and made a mock-up sketch with details of the movement for the elements within your animated logo. And for the production phase, you should have gathered graphics from the internet to use for your logo. Remember that when you're looking for stuff online for graphics, you want stuff with a transparent background so that we don't have, square wheels and things like that. So be careful when you do your searches and look for transparent background in your searches when you're looking for different graphics. And if you have Photoshop, you can always, of course, bring those in and make the backgrounds transparent. Once you have all that ready to go and you have everything in a single folder on your computer, you can begin the post-production stage. So what we want to do is start with starting up Adobe Premiere or another editor if that's what you're using at the start screen. And note that I am going step by step here on the written tutorial that you can find at my website at mrzorn.weebly.com. So start Adobe Premiere. At the start screen, select New Project. Name it with your first and last name followed by underscore, then the name of the project. For example, William Faulkner underscore logo. That's just to keep it simple and keep it identifiable. Please don't make untitled projects. Don't make untitled final movies. Name everything. Name all your graphics. Otherwise, it'll make it more difficult for you to find things when you need to find them. Now, once you click on New Project with the interface open, click File, New, Sequence, and under Sequence Presets, select ABCHD, then 1080p, then AVCHD 1080p 30. Okay, that will give you 1080p, will give you a nice large resolution, big screen, and the 30 means that we will be working at 30 frames per second. Also note that at the bottom of the new sequence window that you see here is a place to name your sequence. Again, don't leave it untitled. Please name that so that you can find it easily when you need to. Okay, so at this point you should be ready to go ahead and import your media. And note that it seems like the arrow movements, the mouse movements didn't record correctly on this, so bear with me there. I'll try to pop up some graphics. At any rate, you need to import your media at this point. You can do that either with Control I if you're on a PC, Command I if you're on a Mac, or just go File, Import, and then go find your media and double click it, and it should pop into the project window in the lower left of the interface. Now that you have all of your media in the project window, which again should be in the lower left of your interface, go ahead and start dragging your media into the sequence, or otherwise known as the timeline. For this project, set your background first, drag it into track 1. It says V1 in Premiere, and your graphics that you intend to animate into the tracks above V1. For purposes of this assignment, the final logo should be between 10 and 15 seconds. So when you drag your media in, you're going to want to stretch them. Just grab the edge, the right side of the box that you see in the video track, and you can grab that with the mouse and stretch it out to the length that you want it to run. In this case, I'm going to go to exactly 10 seconds. However, before you drag in your other graphics, you're going to need to size the background to fit in your output window. Note in the upper right corner is the program window, which is your output window, what is being outputted. That should be in the upper right, right above the timeline. In order to resize something, you first need to make sure that you have that graphic or video selected inside the timeline. It will have a white background around it, or a white border around it if you have it selected. Then go up to the program window, double click on the graphic, and it will grab it. And you can grab the corners and resize. You can also resize through the effect controls window, which is very important. We're going to need our effect controls window in order to keyframe and animate stuff. And when you go to effect controls, you should see that in the upper left. If you don't see that, go to Windows and effect controls, and it should pop up. Note that under effect controls, you should see a number of menu items, from position to scale to opacity to rotate, etc. What you want for this is to go to the scale button and go to the numbers next to where it says scale. Start out at 100%, and that's a slider. You can drag that with your mouse left and right in order to increase or decrease the size of the graphic or video. So you can use the effect control slider, or you can double click and grab the corners manually with the mouse. At this point, you're ready to drag in your other graphics and set them in the timeline in the tracks above the video 1 track where you put your background. And then you have your choice. You can either start making titles at this point, or you can go ahead and animate your graphics that you have first. That's pretty much the way I like to do it. I will get all my animations done, all my keyframing done on the graphics, and then I will bring in the titles so I have a better idea of exactly what the graphics are doing so that the titles go with them. Okay, so here I have my 3 circles in this case for my graphics. At the end of it, I don't want them there. I want them to start at the beginning, so I'm going to move them all over to the far left to the beginning of the video and line them up to be just about exactly 5 seconds long. Now I'm going to select the top one, the green, double click it to grab it, or use the slider in the effect controls and set it where I want it to start, which is in this case off screen. Now be careful here, you want it to just be barely off screen so you can still grab it, or you can use the slider. Now I'm going to, at this point you need to toggle your keyframing or toggle your animation. Note that in the upper left where your effect control window is, you can see position, scale, rotation, and so on. There's a little stopwatch icon right next to each word. You can see it there on position, and we click that to select that, and it turns blue, and that tells the editor that we are going to animate this particular piece of video. So if you look over to the right of the position menu item and the stopwatch, you can see your little mini version of a timeline. You can see diamond is created. That is your keyframe. That's telling it that we're going to animate. At this point, you then take your cursor in your timeline and place it where you want your animation to end. Then go over to the position and, using the slider or double clicking it, if you can grab it, move the graphic to where you want it to end. That'll create another keyframe, and now this little green circle will move when you hit play from off screen, and it will float down towards the middle of the screen where I want it to stop. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing, except different directions for the other 2 graphics that I dragged in. They're each a different colored circle to go with my logo here. And notice that I am moving the one that I want to work with to the top track, which makes it easier to grab when you're double clicking and moving stuff around. You can always reposition them with their layering later, but it's easier to work with it when it's on the top of the track. Also note here, when I drag over, see the little outline of the graphic when it's off screen. Make sure that in Premiere you can see that within the window. It's got to be within the window. If it goes completely outside the window, you won't be able to grab it again. You can only use the sliders. And when you want to do a diagonal like I'm going to do here, you need to be able to select and drag your graphic into the spot that where you want it to be. So be careful with that and just take it so you just barely see it outside of the program window, the output window, so that you can double click and grab it when you need to grab it. So to give you a better idea of what I'm talking about here with the dragging it off screen, this is DaVinci Resolve, and as you can see, it looks very similar. But if we grab the green circle graphic in DaVinci and take it off of the screen, notice that it has the same stuff as like the effect controls up there in the top right, or you can double click and drag and drop. And as you can see, the outline stays when it's off screen. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit with DaVinci, and you still can see that graphic's there, and you can grab it and drag it back in. With Premiere, you can't do that. Once it goes off the screen like that, you can't double click and grab it. You can only use the sliders, so that's kind of a pain. That's why you want to take it just to the very edge so you can still see the outline within the window, so that you can grab it and drag it in to do a diagonal. Now this is Final Cut, and you can see it's largely very similar to what DaVinci is doing there. You got to click on that transform to grab, and then you pull it out. And as you can see, again, just like with DaVinci, you can still see the graphic when it is off screen, when it's outside of the program window, the output window, unlike Premiere, where you can't see it and you're stuck with only having to use the sliders. So be very careful with that in Premiere. When you move them, just barely get them so you can't see the graphic, but you can still see the outline, the corner, so you can grab it and drag it when you're trying to do diagonal movements. So at this point, we're going back to Adobe Premiere, and I already have the red circle that I moved to the top, dragged to the lower left, so where it's the anchors are still visible right there inside the window, so I can grab that later. And we're going to do a similar animation to the other two circles and have them come in at a diagonal, so at the end they all come together towards the middle of the frame. And you can see I messed up there because I forgot to move my cursor along the timeline to the end point. So I'm doing that now, put it to the end point where I want the animation to stop. Then I can go ahead and reposition it. It creates a keyframe. You see that line? That is showing the path of the animation. So if you see that line, you know you're doing it correctly. And now I've got movement with the green and the red. Then we're going to take the blue graphic and again move it to the top so I have that to work with. It's easy to grab. And we're going to repeat the same process. Drag it to the lower right this time. And keyframe it so that it animates and all three of these circles will come together. Notice that at this point the graphics end at 5 seconds. Of course, I want them to stay up in the output window for the entire time. So after I get done with these keyframing here, we'll stretch those out so that the circles last the entire length of the logo, which is 10 seconds total. And that's how long the background is right now. So I'll have to make that adjustment after I do the keyframing here. But here's the blue, we're bringing it in. There's that animation path again. You can see that line. That means we're doing it correctly. Wherever you put it, it shows you that path. So I'll place that where I want it to be. And that finishes up the animation for the three circle graphics that are going to come together. And there they are all together. Hit play, and we see the full speed of it. And as we go here, I'm also going to keyframe opacity, which is going to make them fade in as they move in. So we're going to do keyframing and animation in two different ways here, both by position and by opacity. So here this is where the opacity menu item is down there. We click on the little stopwatch again to tell the editor that we're going to be animating. We make sure our cursor is at the beginning, at the start point. You can see right now I made the opacity 0%. You just type that in, or you can do the slider. Then you move the cursor in the timeline to the end point, change it to 100%. Now if we go back, and you can see that now it's fading in as well as floating in for our keyframed animation. We'll repeat that same process with the other circles so that everything is fading in and it looks nice. So here's that process. Let's go to the next one in line. Remember to reposition your cursor to the end point before you change it to 100%. And now we have two of them that are fading as they come in. Last one is the green. So we're going to grab the green guy. We're going to click on opacity, stopwatch, change it to 0%, move the cursor to where I want it to stop fading, and change it to 100%. Now you'll notice here that I messed it up again. And I actually wanted the fading to stop when the circles stopped moving. And instead, I messed up and I went all the way to the end of the 10 seconds when I should have done it at 5 seconds. I can fix that by going into the little window next to in the effect controls in order to correct that. If you mess up the timing of your keyframing, you can use the keyframe timeline window in the effect controls to drag the keyframe to the point in the timeline you want. So recall I messed that up and I had it all the way to the end of the 10 seconds and I actually wanted it to be to 5. So if I go to the timeline window in the effects controls, you can see the little diamond that shows the keyframing. Right now it is centered on the keyframe position of the positioning when for the keyframing of moving the circles. I can now take that little triangle that you see at the very end under opacity and I can drag that over for each of them so that the keyframed opacity, the fade in, stops and becomes completely 100% opaque at that 5-second mark instead of at the 10-second mark. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my titles to the project. Note that for some reason the screen record didn't record the title screen when it opened up, but here's how you do it. You go File, New, Legacy Title. That'll open up a title window and you can just click with your mouse with the text tool and you can type in what you want. You can change the fonts, you can change the colors, you can add drop shadows, you can add outlines, everything you can pretty much do like you would in Photoshop with your text. When you're done writing the text inside that window, you just close the window and it pops into your source box there in the lower left, the project box. So as you can see, it did pop in the title, even though it didn't show me making the title. And so what we're doing here is Circles of Confusion Media. So I'm going to make two titles. First one is Circles of Confusion, and that's what popped into the lower left project box. And I'm making some adjustments to that right now. And you're going to drag that into another video track above all the graphics that we dragged into the other 4 video tracks that we have so far. So we drag that text into there and You should be able to see it then when you put the cursor over that text, and you can go ahead and animate that text just as we did with the circles. You can have it float in using the position menu item, or you can make it grow or shrink with scale. You can make it fade in, fade out with opacity, and you can also make things rotate in 2 dimensions. Can't go 3-dimension rotation, but we can go 2-dimension rotation. So as you just watch the screen here, and now we're dragging in that first title, it's going to say Circles of Confusion. There it is. And you can resize that to however long you want it to last, or however long you want it to come in, and do the same thing you did with the keyframing as before. Make sure that your cursor is at the beginning of where you want the animation to start. Click on the little compass symbol so that it activates the animating keyframing, and then move your cursor to where you want the animation to stop, and then change that position or that scale or that opacity or the rotation. Note under the rotation, if you want things to rotate, the slider with the numbers next to rotation, you can just drag that and you will see your graphic or your title or your video spin as many times as you hold that slider over to the right. So you can just spin it as many times as you want, and make sure you position it correctly. Make sure that you're putting your cursor in the right place so you get your timing down right, and you will end up with a spinning, moving, fading, any combination of the 3, as well as scale, growing, enlarging, or shrinking. Any combination, all of those can do the same thing at the same time, so that you get the effect that you want. And here is the final animation for the titles. Just putting in my rotations there for the lower one, the word media. And once we get that set to however many we want, we can go ahead and go back and play the whole thing, and you see that the media spins into the scene and the circles of confusion fades, and everything comes together in the middle at the end. So now we can go ahead and add our final piece of the puzzle here, which is the sound effects. And you can see I already have some loaded up here. That was just a little whoosh sound for the media. And then this one is just some confusing music that I found to try to go along with the idea of the circles of confusion. So we can take our 2 soundtracks, we drag them into the audio tracks below the video, put them in the position we want, and that. So the only thing we have left now is to go ahead and export your final product. We want it to be an MP4 or a .mov. To export, go to File, Export, Media, or use the keyboard shortcuts Control or Command M. The very top line under Format, always select H.264. Under Preset, select Match Source High Bitrate. That's usually the default, or High Quality 1080p HD. Under Output Name, click on the temporary name of the file. It's in blue. Change the name to your name, the project name, the class period, and the word final, with underscores in between each of those. And navigate to your desktop folder so you know where it is being saved, and click Save. Then at the bottom right of the export window, click Export. You'll see a bar come up, a progress bar. When the encoding progress bar finishes, your final product should be complete and ready to go. Please open the file inside your folder and test the video to make sure it plays properly before turning it in. Turn-ins should be via Teams as long as the final file is less than 100 megabytes. Otherwise, you'll have to use Google Drive or bring it to me on an actual flash drive, preferably a disinfected flash drive. And that concludes our tutorial. Please ask questions. Please send me emails. I can help you out. For distance learners, this may be a struggle at first, but stay with it and ask me questions, and I can help you out as best as I can. Thanks.